Ok, hola, ¿qué tal amigos y amigas? Muy buenas noches aquí en su programa en TV Azteca, la era de las definiciones. Hoy tenemos, como siempre, una grata sorpresa de un personaje mundial con una gran trayectoria. Se trata de Karen Tramontano. Y ella hizo estudios en Georgetown University, en la Universidad Católica, and in Boston College. She's pretty well equipped with knowledge out of these universities. Today, she has a foundation or works on a foundation by the name of Blue Star Strategy, una institución que se dedica a hacer consulta al mundo corporativo with those customers, trying to orient them to the bottom line, to results, to return on investment. So she's a great business mind, but she also works on the social nonprofit organization. It makes a great contribution. Hace una gran contribución en instituciones sociales que son sin fines de lucro. So if it's okay with you, Karen, after this presentation, I'd like to start right there. Your experience on global affairs, specifically on globalization, and how do you work out or how do you operate the idea of globalization being with a human face?
Thank you so much, President Fox. It is just wonderful to see you and wonderful to be a part of this program. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to your audience in Mexico. I began the Global Fairness Initiative right after my work with President Clinton. As you know, I served as Deputy Chief of Staff in the Clinton White House. And I was lucky and honored to work for President Clinton, with whom I traveled to many, many countries. And what I saw in these countries were people who worked very, very, very hard, but who did not share in the wealth of their country. That's true in the United States. It's true all over the world. And these families, these individuals, these men and women, they work to improve the lives of their children and their grandchildren. Yet they are off the grid. They are in the informal sector. As you know, President Fox, over 61% of the working men and women are in the informal economy. That is over 4 billion people. They are unregistered, undocumented. Their work is not recognized, yet they are the backbone of every single economy. And so when I left the Clinton administration, I wanted to try to do something to improve the lives of those who are working every day to improve their own lives. And that's why I started the the Global Fairness Initiative, and President Clinton was our first chairperson.
Great. President Clinton, great man, great accomplishments, a great human being, very humane, a leader of the world. He traveled around the world to build, to exercise that strong leadership that United States used to, and I subscribe, used to have, that we admire in the rest of the world, not only the personality, the capacity of President Clinton, but also the commitment of this great nation, United States, with trying to work together with the world and trying to come up with great things for the world. It's not making America great, it's making the world great. It's making every nation capable and with opportunities. So my admiration to President Clinton, and I know you worked together with him, and that brought you all these activities and experiences. But now, yes, on the world arena of globalization, today highly criticized, today the new messages that didn't work, that didn't serve the purpose, and maybe because they were thinking about, or they are thinking about these 4 billion that are not on board, that have not been included on development. But on the other side, we have a huge impact of globalization in economies around the world to the better, to improve them. But how come nations and economies progressed and it didn't go down to people, to these people that we're talking about? Why it didn't work like that? Or even to tell us that globalization did work and did work extremely well because there were a lot of accomplishments, but the left out is our commitment and our trying to put them on board.
So, yeah, I mean, as you said, globalization had some positive results. We cannot deny that. It certainly lifted people, numbers of people out of poverty. But, and you led your country for many years. There's the initial changes that you can make, but then it gets harder, and you have to have the political will. You have to change the policies with intention to go to the working poor. You have to identify the informal. You have to know where they are. You have to know, what they are providing to the economy. It has to be intentional, and it has to have, the leadership has to have the political will to want to make a difference in that part of the economy. And it's so easy to just count the easy victories and say, yes, we've accomplished much, and move on to the next, the next thing, as opposed to working very, very hard. I'll give you an example of work that we did in Tunisia after the poor young man set himself on fire, for the whole world to see how his hard work was not benefiting him. And why? Because he came up against one barrier after another, after another, after another. And he wasn't looking for a handout. He wasn't looking for government to even help him to make a living. He was willing to do it on his own, but he needed government not to be in the way. He needed corruption to be eliminated. He needed the regulatory framework to be fair to everybody, not just big businesses, but all businesses and small enterprises as well as larger enterprises. He needed the government to be intentional in making sure there was fairness in the economy, that the economy was working for all, and that it was inclusive. And he wasn't given that. He wasn't given that fair opportunity. So we were then called into Tunisia to help, and to help the government think through and to identify those people in the economy, those sectors of the economy that were informal and could, with the proper regulation, with the proper intention, with the thoughtfulness of the leadership, those segments of the economy could be brought in a one-stop shop way, so that people not only had a fair opportunity to work, but a fair opportunity to access their benefits, a fair opportunity to access the trade laws, where globalization, they could be a part of it as opposed to excluded from it. And I'm happy to say our program in Tunisia, because of the wonderful local team we have there, the leadership of the government of Tunisia. And we worked with many, many different changes of government, as you know, after the Arab Spring. But each of those governments embraced the idea of inclusiveness, mainstreaming informality into the formal economy.
So, Karen, what we're saying is the answer to the problems that globalization created is responsibility of whom of the players, because we do have, yes, governments and economies, but it's 200 governments and economies, difficult to go one by one like you did in Tunisia. And then we have corporate world and local corporate world, those international global corporations that brought a lot of development, but also brought a lot of problems to economies around the world. So that's second player. Third player is locally, local governments, local people, citizens, because the cry, the big demand of those 4 billion that you mentioned, all those left behind is there. And they are now revealing, they're putting the pressure on economies and governments that they want and they need the opportunities and to be on board. So out of the players, where would you start? Global institutions, I forgot that, the World Bank, the FMA, the this and that, United Nations. How do we make those players have this consciousness that you're saying you must act directly with the purpose of including everybody, and if not, it's not worth what we're doing? Where would you attack?
So I think, you have to start at the very local level. I mean, it's wonderful for all the international institutions to, establish a framework. I mean, we would argue that the framework has to be about mainstreaming informality to the formal economy. But it has to start at the local level, at the level of the state, and it's all the economic stakeholders at that level. As you said, President Fox, it is the private sector. The private sector cannot be afraid of the informal worker. They can't try to, make the informal worker illegal. They can't talk about the informal worker as an inhuman, illegal. No, the informal worker, that informal family, and the local entrepreneurs and the local corporations, as well as the state, all have to, and the institutions that work for workers, whether they're trade unions or associations or cooperatives, that's the civil society. Everybody at that local level has to get together. They have to understand what the cost is. And to your point, COVID, this coronavirus has ripped the covers off. We now know who provides goods and services to our economy. And frankly, it's not me. It is the people who are on the ground. It is the farmers. It is those people in the beginning of the supply chain. We realized, all of us, the whole world realized, what a dishonor and a disservice we have done to these people. And we're continuing to put them in harm's way. So we have to come to terms with it at a local level, then at a country level. And the international community has to stop perceiving wealth and and economic gain in a macro sense. We have to worry about the micro sense of the problem, because at that level there are solutions. There are very, very good solutions that we can put in place if there's the political will, and frankly, if people in the private sector are not greedy, if everybody only works for their share, not some, leveraged, venture capital, huge percentage, of a gain that they want. No, we have to go back to what is fair, because if we want to sustain this globe, everybody has to have a stake in it. Everybody has to want it to be sustainable. And if you have 4 billion people who are unhappy and feel ill-treated and not respected, that is not a sustainable global economy.
Yes, Karen, before we go to a break, allowed me a comment. I usually take the concept of vanguard, a very successful vanguard that has done great things, unbelievable things, but that vanguard is forgetting about the rear guard. Yes. And the rear guard is being left behind. And today, we must understand that it's not walls to prevent that rear guard to come over to United States or to wherever. They're gonna jump any wall. They're gonna be very demanding on having an opportunity, on having and being on board. So I don't know if failure and problems, and we see even that rear guard becoming violent, like it's happening with some migrants coming from South America, that they say, I go through, if police wants to stop me, I don't care, I risk my life, but I want to go where I have the opportunities. And is that an example of what we're seeing now and today, that we must be conscious, we must be and accept that either we attend that rear guard or they're gonna break windows, break walls, and break police trying to stop them. So we go to a break, Karen, and in 1 minute, we're right back.
Thank you.
Okay, Karen, we're right back with our audience. Karen, there are trade agreements to come, because I think in essence, they're good, because you're exchanging goods and it seems to be a win-win situation for commerce, for trading, for economy, but not for the people we're talking about. Break this vicious circle so that we get better trade agreements. Who has to start? We don't have a world institution to come and tell us, no, you have to do it like this. Or how do we bring this input into this this trio or this quarter of people taking decisions and not considering this advantage? I would even say, fortunately, lately, environment and the climate warming is being considered in some of those trade agreements, but yet salaries, wages, and workers are not strongly represented there. And the surprise is that corporate world is very good with their own employees. They usually have pretty good salaries, pretty good social programs in response. So they treat and they say is their best asset, people in human resource. But when we talk about trade agreement, it does not. When that trade agreement lands in India or lands in Africa or lands in Latin America, we pay the price.
So I think where it needs to begin, as always, is with leadership. And leaders like yourself, like President Clinton, and many others who understand that it can't be, a zero-sum game. They understand that, the voice of workers has to be not only strong and given access so that they can be heard, but it has to be really, understood. And that has been, left out of the equation in my view. It's so interesting, President Fox, that you point out the environment, because in some ways, for both trade agreements, but also for corporations in their interests, making marginal changes or even significant changes that affect the climate, for most corporations, it's not a big cost. It's a cost, but it's not a cost like workers' cost. And when when corporations try to drive the policies behind these trade agreements, what are they looking for? They're not looking to, increase their ability to damage the climate. No, they're looking for low cost workers. That's why they're traveling around.
You mentioned that maybe leadership, but leadership with a human face, leadership with compassion, being able to participate on the top, maybe that would be the answer. But we're training leaders in most of the schools, MIT, Tecnológico de Monterrey, for business.
Yeah.
We're building in them the capacity to see the bottom line and to work on the bottom line and to work on more. In Centro folks, we try to build every day this humane leadership, this compassionate leadership with poor kids that we bring in from around communities from all of Mexico for an immersion on leadership, but on this type of leadership, compassionate leadership, when you work for others, when you're generous, when you know that everybody has to progress or you will not. Schools are doing their part. I mean, universities, those that you know, we in Centro folks are doing it with that very social commitment side on those leaders, so that hopefully they get to the top, and as leaders, they can change things and they can modify the way things are being done today. What you think about this? Could that be the way to break through and change this? Education.
Yeah, education, certainly on both on the private side and in the public side, we have to do a better job of educating our leaders. And we also have to elect leaders that have compassion. And, I am very, very pleased to see the many, many young people, not only in the United States, but around the world, who are taking such a social interest in fairness, whether it's racial fairness or the differentiation between the wealthy and the poor, or the wealthy and the working class, closing that income gap, recognizing the discrimination against people of color, ethnic discrimination, and they are in the streets in our country in a good way. They are bringing these issues to the forefront, and they're frustrated, and shame on us and our generation for not having addressed these systematic problems of the wealth gap and racial discrimination, and ethnic discrimination. And I think these young people are calling for a different ethos. They're demanding that the government do something about the problems that they have to deal with every day as Black and brown people, as poor people. The challenges that in the United States that are put, the barriers to the economy that poor people have to face in my country, where there's a very limited social safety net, very limited benefits. People are penalized just because they're poor. But young people are demanding more, and that is just so wonderful to see, and I support their efforts. And I was a part of a program several years ago for graduate schools of business, for both the scope of that program to be opened up so that business schools were looking at social impacts. They were, students were demanding that it not just be about a bottom line or a quarterly report. So I think that that's good. I am very, very hopeful about where our young people are going to take us in the future.
Great to hear you. And I hope our audience will be very attentive to this kind of thinking that we needed badly in the world. And we at Centro folks, taking advantage of the pandemic, we are renewing ourselves. We're in a renaissance. We say what we were doing was not enough. The way we're pushing leadership can be changed, and we need a description of what is coming. And we have to go to a break, and we'll come right back. And this will be the idea: the world after pandemia. What we see there coming. We break, and we come back in a minute. Thank you. Karen, we're back here. And we were talking about or brought in the pandemic, the COVID-19. It's incredible that the largest economy in the world with the most technology capacities, with the vanguard on most any front of development, is on its knees in front of the pandemic. It's incredible. Nobody would have thought just 6 months ago that the United States would be hit so hard and so bad. Independent of government leadership that I think has been too weak and too absent and many times wrong on the way it has conducted, which the same thing has happened in other countries, specifically Mexico. We are not doing well. This is extending further and away than what we had thought. And so, but maybe it's a wake-up call. Maybe it's a renaissance call. Maybe we can, if not start out of zero again, humankind, we must start with correction, changes, but the direction of those changes, the renewal of activities and economy is very uncertain. It seems to be clarifying now what is next, but we'd love to hear your point about what is next and if we can rebuild this great set of values, of commitments that we're talking about, because otherwise we will be running fast to a more and more problematic, violent, disorder world than we have today. So we must rebuild in that sense. I told you that Centro folks were eager to hear new thoughts, new visions. What is behind the wall? In this case, the wall of what is the future? Because we think that we need this renaissance to try to convey or support or work on ideas that are going to be very factual, that are going to be very accurately pointed out to the way we renaissance and the way we do things on this close future. Give me your thoughts on that. I think it would be exciting.
Oh, thank you very, very much. So I can speak to the United States, but I think this is probably true in just about any country. No change has come to the United States. No social change, no true inclusive economic change has come to the United States without the people demanding it and with the people demanding accountability from their leaders. And I think what has changed in the United States from 2017, 18, 19, if you examine our elections, both midterm and off-year elections, the people were demanding more. They were demanding, and this is before COVID, before the coronavirus. They were demanding that their leaders do more, and they were staying in the streets in areas of racial and social justice, in issues of economic inclusion, in protections. Then the coronavirus hit, and that just accelerated. And I think it's going to be very, very, not even just important, essential that the people stay focused, they keep their demands loud and clear, and they continue to demand accountability from their leadership. That, I believe, is the only way we are going to see a social and economic movement globally. And with that drive and that demand for accountability and that demand for change, we have to have the right leaders in power to respond to that. And, hopefully in a few more weeks, we will see that change. It is, I don't want to be political on your program, but I am embarrassed, appalled. As you said,
please be political.
We should not be where we are. We had a president that not only did nothing, and I mean nothing, he refused to acknowledge and continues to refuse in the face of over 200,000 dead people. These are husbands and wives and fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers and sons and daughters. He's not even acknowledging today the seriousness of this virus. And so there's, just an incredible lack of leadership. But what was even worse is to make this disease political. Politicizing wearing a mask, politicizing washing your hands, politicizing whether you opened or closed your bodega, your little store, your restaurant. Making it a political choice it cost lives. It cost thousands and thousands of lives. And I'm embarrassed. I'm appalled. As an American, I have never felt more ashamed. Never have I felt more ashamed in my life. Now, my family's Italian, so my family are immigrants, proud to be immigrants, proud to be a part of the United States. But today, I am just ashamed at the countless loss of lives that did not have to happen. If we had had a national effort, if we had had a leader that said, wear a mask, keep 6 to 12 feet apart, and wash your hands, and that is what I am doing as a leader. But and that's pretty, it was a pretty simple task, President Fox. And what is outstanding is even with that just very simple leadership task, it didn't happen.
Go ahead.
No, I said even with that very simple leadership task, it didn't happen. And that's why we are here today. And with GFI, we work all over the world. So certainly we have been in countries where the leadership has done similar things. But honestly, in most countries with far fewer resources, as you said, leaders have taken it seriously and have cared about whether their people lived or died. Yeah. And it's that caring, that compassion that is missing in our country right now.
Yeah, that leadership and the question would be, how it came about? Vision, humanism, humility to understand the problem. Cases like we saw, Korea, Australia, and so on. Even China. I mean, China, maybe through a dictatorship or a very authoritarian government, they control the case. They reduced it to one province into. But what you're saying is right. So there's a problem in leadership in some cases, in some nations. But still, now, tell me, we're going to be suffering a lot. We're going to be hit hard. But how can we come back to a renaissance? How can we come back to, in Mexico, in the States? Because you say that now is a lot of hope and it's increasing for change in the United States. And I think it will happen. But will it change the circumstances? Will it change things that we move with Biden instead of Trump? Or again, it's people, it's corporations, it's communities, it's universities, it's leaders of technology. Are we learning the lesson and are we going to act different? With Biden brings us some solutions. What you see in the near future? What would be this next step?
It is the most important question. Will we learn from this experience? Will we remember from this experience? And will we change? Will we change as a people fundamentally? You know, so Vice President Biden used the expression, build back better, right? That's the slogan, build back better. And we need to do that. We have we are a very rich country. We are resource rich. We are intelligent. We have the best universities. We have the best minds. We have some of the best businesses. And we have to remind ourselves, and that's why I go back to what is going on in the streets. We have to visualize every single day how to hold our leaders accountable. And I think it's also going to depend, again, on the United States as to what the election results really show. If it is a big win for Biden, if it is a change in the Senate, if our House of Representatives either stays the same or even becomes more progressive, then I think everybody in the world will hear the message from the people, not from the leaders. They will hear a message from the people that the United States is learning from its mistakes and it wants real change and it is demanding real change. And I think we're going to see that. I don't want to make any predictions because anything can change. I was in Iowa for Secretary Clinton in 2016. So I know anything can change in a very short period of time. So I'm not going to make any predictions, but I think if we look at the trends in the United States, we look at the interim election results in 2017, we look at what happened in 2018, we look at the interim election results in 2019, we have a trajectory. The people are sending a message. They don't want this to continue. And they have to, unfortunately, because of the way our political parties are, they have to send a very strong, a very clear, and unequivocal message that they want change and they want people and what is happening in people's lives to be the priority for their leaders, not profits, but people.
Karen, I share with you what you're saying, but sometimes I get disappointed with people. People criticize, people demand change, but we don't get light, enlightenment, where to go. Now, let me give you two examples here. One is Dalai Lama. Two people that are that have wisdom, Dalai Lama and Pope Francisco. Dalai Lama says, we live in a world of 8 billion people. It's our home for 8 billion. So we must make sure that it's the home for 8 billion and not just for 4 billion. And the other 4 billion are out of everything, opportunities, income, etc., even homes. So that's one very strong voice with a lot of compassion and humanism. But the latest voice, which I don't know if you read or went through, and you're Italian, you have Italian background, Fratelli Tutti. The voice of Papa Francisco is very strong on this last message, very large message. It's an encyclica, and it's incredible because he touches upon neoliberalism, he touches upon globalization, and he concludes exactly what we're concluding. There were some good things about that, but at the very end, the bottom line is not there for 4 billion people. And it's very humane, it's very compassive, but it's very strong and firm, demanding change. But he, like in the Enlightenment, 200 years ago or more, gives light, where to go. Number one, reason. Let's all reason things, not just get what we get from media and from TV, and they tell us this and that, fake news, real news, or whatever. Even governments, they speak too much and they say very few smart things. So reason, people must reason if you're a citizen and try to think about what is the enlightenment, where we should go. Science, everything has to be proven because today we get so much information that is lack of content, lack of documentation, lack of truth. Half of what we hear is lies. The other half is half lies. And only maybe 10, 20% is the truth. So science, and finally, humanism, the 3 pillars of enlightenment. I think that we have voices or concepts that should guide us to the future. But then thinking, planning, having ideas is not enough. The real cherry on the pie of leadership is make things happen. This concept should land in practice in this. And that's what I see, a very complicated world, those strong leaders of the past that used to influence the whole world with their voice. Today, we don't see world leaders. I mean, Trump is involved in his problems in the United States and his criteria that is very narrow. And he doesn't care about what's going on in the rest of the world. He didn't care enough to learn from New Zealand leadership, to learn from Korea, or even to learn from China, having humility to learn how they did it. And so we don't have those world leaders, those world voices. We do have it in Pope Francisco, but I don't know if he goes further and away Catholics and not reaching the rest of society. And Dalai Lama is also very humane, very strong. Or those thoughts of the past. What do you see? Who is going to guide us to the next level?
So I think you're absolutely right in the 2 outstanding individuals that you were talking about. But I think it proves the point that our leadership can no longer be just political leaders. We need to open up our mind and open up our space for other leaders, and we have to provide, as a globe, we have to provide the platforms for new leaders, not just President so-and-so, Chancellor so-and-so, Prime Minister so-and-so, but for new leaders. You know, in my country, you know, back during the civil rights movement, you know, we weren't looking for, you know, Senator so-and-so to, you know, pass civil rights. We were looking at Martin Luther King. We were listening to his inspiration. That's what motivated people and moved people. And we need more. And again, I go back to these young people, you know, whether it's Black Lives Matter or other social and civil movements of young people who are out there, whose voice is being heard. We have to give them the space to lead, and we have to recognize the contributions that they are bringing and embrace that. And I think as a global society, we got very, very lazy. Let some government, let some secretary general take care of it. No, each of us has a role to play. We each have a responsibility. If we want a better world, we have to take the necessary actions to have that better world. And it may be to run for office, but it may be to teach students. It may be like Centro Fox to run a leadership institute. We have to take the responsibility. And again, speaking to the United States, I think when President Obama was elected, which was a high point in our country, I think we all got lazy. We all thought, well, we're done. We did it. We don't have to do anything else. We don't even have to vote in 4 more years. And I think what 2016 taught us is, if we want a good country, if we want a good world, we have to be actively engaged, and we have to become the leaders. We have to fill that gap of leadership that's not there. The leaders are not there right now. I don't think that's always going to be that way. But I certainly think you're right. I mean, I just look back some 20 years when President Clinton was in office, and I could go around the globe, and in every part of the globe, I could pick 4 and 5 real leaders. Kwasniewski in Poland, for example, right? I mean, real leaders. And now, look around. Oh my God. You know, just in our own North and South America, oh my God, where did they go? Europe. Name 2. And it wasn't like that 20 years ago. But I do think what you said, this lack of serious, rational thinking based on scientific information is gone in this day of social media, sound bites. Nobody reads past a tweet. I mean, that's scary. And we have to get back to what Pope Francis and the Dalai Lama have outlined. And I am a true believer.
Karen, time is finished, and I will not let you go except that you promise, with your foundation, where you're creating and producing this leadership on youth that you mentioned here in the program. What was the name of it?
It is called Creando tu Futuro.
Okay, I need you and I to work on that, and maybe you give me, once we finish, the address who do I need here in Mexico to join forces, because that was very much on the line of Centro Fox and what we're doing. So
absolutely, we would love to.
And maybe I will end up on your last comment, which I truly and profoundly share with you. We seem to be twin souls in a way, on the way we think. But to remember those words of President Kennedy, which we should ask ourselves, not what the world is going to do for us, not what our nation is going to do for us or our government, what we're going to do for our government, for our nation, for our community. I think that's it. The cornerstone of what you're saying is the people that we must move, but with this enlightenment, with proposals, with good things. And So we're all working on this. I thank you very much for this conversation. It's been great. I'm sure it's going to be enjoyed by many, many people in Mexico, in our Hispanic world, in the United States. Thank you to you, and let's keep in contact because I need to have access to your wisdom in our foundation, in our plans to the future. Thank you, Karen. It's been great.
Muchas gracias, muchísimas gracias, and I look forward to working together.
Muchas gracias, Karen. Good luck. God bless you.
God bless. Thank you.